Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. My name is Andy Zaremba, or at Andy Zaremba on Instagram, pretty much the only social media platform I bother to use these days.
You've reduced it down to just Instagram pretty much?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm going to be on Instagram. That's good enough. And it covers pretty much my bases. I get the photos up. I get the nice stories. I'm all over stories now. That's my thing. And I don't have to go to Snapchat because of that.
Right.
And besides, I don't want to talk to teenagers.
Right.
When they get to 20, I'll talk to them. But
that's your
teenagers.
That's your cutoff.
Yeah.
That's your Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to go into teenage world. So Instagram is where you can find me at Andy Zaremba.
Cool.
And with me behind the helm today, as usual, is my brother Mike.
Hey everybody, nice to be with you. Welcome, and thanks for joining. My social media game's gone completely downhill since I've had my baby.
Oh yeah.
I barely even look at it. Not even let alone post myself.
It's true. I tag you in a really cool post, and I don't get a response till a week later.
Yeah, no, I just don't check. Barely. I'll only check for Floathouse. That's it. Mostly. So, anyways,
speaking of Floathouse,
yes. You want me to do the Floathouse?
Yeah, do the Floathouse.
Okay,
you're good at the Floathouse.
We are podcasting here at a 70 West Cordova Street, which is Floathouse. Floathouse.ca is our website, and we specialize in flotation therapy, which is a practice of getting inside a sensory deprivation tank. If you haven't heard of it, we have a great, very concise YouTube video that you can search. Just type in "what is floating," and the top result will be our video, and it gives you a really good breakdown of what is going on in that environment and why maximal sensory reduction is actually very, very healthy for you, especially in when you're living in an urban environment where you're bombarded with stimuli nonstop.
Especially social media.
That's part of it, email, for sure. Yeah,
and texting and phone calls.
I've noticed
babies crying
since I've had my son, which is 4 months now. And I haven't been floating as much. When I do go for that float, it takes me longer to get settled in, just because I'm not as consistent with my practice. And it takes a solid half an hour for the mind just to get all that crap out, and then I can go into the body.
I notice it takes longer to get into the floats these days, or if you take a hiatus from floating. However, I feel like it's somewhat ingrained in me at this point. Like that pathway is sort of ingrained, and it's like that ritualized experience where it's like when I'm showering and the float tank's there, and I open the door, and all those sensory cues get me ready to relax now. So even if I haven't floated for a couple of weeks, then I find I can really slip away pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we've been floating since 2010, and so how many hundreds of hours have we put into the tank? So
I don't know.
You get good at it. It is a skill. I'll tell you that, folks. It is definitely a skill that you need to practice, and it takes a few shots to really make a nice connection with it.
I play the fun game of how much can I relax? Really?
Yes.
It's amazing how much you can actually release and let go that you're holding on to subconsciously or unconsciously. This little space between my eyebrows, I constantly squinch that. And that's the first place I'm like, oh, all right, you don't have to be all squinchy and analytical right now. You can relax and let go. And I relax that, and I just scan my body, internally, and I feel all little tension spots and try to breathe into them and let them release. And it's amazing how far you can let go of the motor control in your body. Yeah. And there's a lot of motor control you kind of just hang on to without even thinking about it, right?
Totally.
And it's just if you can let that go and relax, just so good for you.
I mean, I know for me personally, I've not been able to feel. I didn't know it was possible to be as relaxed as you can get within a sensory reduced environment. I just didn't know how relaxed you could get. And so if you want to try it, you can use the promo code Vancouver Real, and you'll save 20% off a single float.
Let's move on from floating.
Yeah,
that was
that's
a long
enough.
talk about floating. Yeah,
but we love floating.
Yes, go float. Floathouse.ca. Just sneak that one right back in there. Also, we have a couple community groups that we're fairly active in. I'm still working together, working to put the next Mindful Mass meditation event together. Mindful Mass is a group of people that is an online community, and essentially what we do is we go to public spaces, of course with permits and permission of the public space or private space, and we do giant mass meditations. So everyone's welcome. They're completely free to public, and it's just a really great way to normalize meditation is how I like to describe it. It's we go into these weird spaces and people are always kind of gawking and why is this mass of people just sitting here? And that's part of the point of it, is to sort of spread the awareness of meditation, because I think it's actually extremely beneficial for people. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I do think if people do decide to take it on, it can greatly benefit their lives.
Yeah.
So look for Mindful Mass Vancouver Meditation Mob. It's a Facebook group, and we'll let you join. And we also have a website. It is mindfulmass.org.
Yeah.
So you can connect with us for Mindful Mass events that way.
Cool. And Vancouver Real Community, vancouverreal.tv is our website. You can sign up for the mailing list to see any events we have coming up on the horizon. I believe we do have another one with Dr. Carlos de Leon coming up sometime in April, and talking about shamanism. And he'll be kind of just going into a whole bunch of mystical, esoteric talk, and he's really interesting and fun. So definitely come and join that one. And I believe there's an event on Facebook as well. And join the Facebook group for Vancouver Real Community, and stay up to date with everything we got going on there.
Totally. Oh, well. And today is the 6th or 7th or 8th, I don't know, installment of the TEDx Stanley Park series. And this has been quite the ride for me, because I've got to have this preview of all these speakers beforehand. And I get to dive a little deeper into the story, because, on the TEDx stage, what do you have, 15 minutes, 16 minutes? 15 minutes, right? And we get to go deeper. We go for 45. We get into the nooks and crannies. We find out the motivations, what's really driving you to do this. And today we have Victoria Welsby, and you have a website called bampowlife.com. Very punchy, as we mentioned before. And first of all, welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thank you so much for having me. And I feel so relaxed after you talking about the Float House, because I meditate every day and I'm just like, I want to get in there now.
Well,
yes.
We can make that happen for you. We'll get you in there. So bampowlife.com, you can be reached through Victoria at bampowlife.com. And you are an adjunct professor at UBC, and you are also a body image activist. Mm-hmm. So, as I start off with all these TEDx speakers every week, the first thing I ask is, what is the topic of your talk, and why did you choose it?
So my talk title is I Am Fat, and it's all about fat phobia and more generally body image issues that people may have. And we let body image issues hold us back, and we waste our time thinking, do I look okay? Am I this enough or that enough? And I think it's really important to forget about all that stuff, because it doesn't really matter.
Right. So your talk is about body image disorders. And do you cover sort of the spectrum of those, or are you just focusing on the fat aspect or obesity aspect?
So it's focused. My story is on the fat side, but it's also covering the general side. So it's relatable for everyone, because everyone at some time has said, I don't feel good.
Right. Some self-conscious thing about their body in one way, shape, or form. It could be whatever. They're too skinny, too tall, too, whatever. There's a million different things that people get self-conscious about. My hair is not good enough today, whatever, right? Yeah. There's a million things. So it seems a little bit self-evident, but I'll let you explain it. Why did you choose this topic?
Why did I choose this topic? So throughout my life, I've always been a high achiever. I've always been a great friend. I've been smart. I've done well in my jobs, but I always thought that I was a failure because I'm fat. And I did so many diets trying to become not fat, and spent so much time, money, and energy on the pursuit of thinness. And I just thought, I'm just a less of a human being because of this clear flaw that I have that's visible to everyone. And eventually I realized that I'm a great person, and it doesn't matter that I'm fat. And I didn't actually have to spend my life dedicated to trying to become thin, because it wasn't happening, no matter how little I ate, how much I exercised, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I had that realization, I was like, oh my God, everyone needs to know this, because it's so joyful and wonderful. And now that I can take that overachiever side of me and really focus on the things that actually matter in life.
Right. So was that overachiever side of you, that perfectionist, whatever you want to call it, the type A, was that the one being the judge and the critic of yourself, and the one like holding you to a really high standard?
Yeah.
And that was causing you sort of that mental turmoil, mental anguish?
Yeah, and it's a complex issue, right? So society as well tells me that I need to look a certain way, tells everyone they need to look a certain way if you're, no matter what gender you are, no matter what age. And so I couldn't accept myself as being mediocre. The one side of myself that I saw as mediocre was my physical appearance.
Right.
And now I have a frame of, no, I am a goddamn queen, and my physical appearance is... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Even if people don't think I'm a queen, it's fine. It's all good.
It's all about how you feel about yourself,
Yeah.
right? And of course, there's so many industries that are geared towards that and geared towards selling us a body image or a lifestyle or this or that. And there's a lot of money involved with it, right? So, marketing is an interesting thing, and it's a very tricky territory to navigate, especially when you're young and self-conscious. There's so many different fad diets out there, so many different things that people try. Like right now, I'm currently doing a ketogenic diet, and it's working well for me. And it's one of those things I found has worked well in the past. It's not always the best solution because afterwards, typically it comes back on eventually. But the good thing about keto for me is that when I'm on it, my energy feels really good, my mood is really good, and I feel I have better mental focus and clarity, and I lose weight. So it's something that works for me, probably not for everybody, because it's a very strange diet to be having 70% of your calories come from fat. But what are some of these other diets that you've tried and maybe even cycled through and then maybe given up on just because it's just like, it's not working for you?
Mm-hmm. So 95% of diets fail. And you were saying about how there's these massive industries out there. So the diet industry is worth $66 billion just last year. So Americans last year spent $66 billion on trying to become thinner, whereas 95% of diets fail. So it's bananas, really.
It's a good revenue model if you want to look at it from just a strictly business perspective.
Repeat customers for life.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the diet industry, well, not great, but great for them, is that they think that you fail at your diet and you think that you're the greedy loser. But the reality is our bodies aren't built to be on diets because we are literally starving. And our bodies are these incredible things that are like, give me the calories. Oh, my God, what are you doing to me? Totally. And like you mentioned, eventually you put the weight back on.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that you're at home guzzling lard milkshakes 24 hours a day. It's probably just...
Unless you're doing keto.
Yeah, then maybe you are.
Yeah.
But the reality is that diets don't work. And so at one time in my life, I lost 60 pounds and I was what we'd call like straight size, average size. But still, I was... what I thought was going to happen when I lost weight was that, guys were going to fall at my feet and money was going to rain down from the sky. And all of a sudden I'd be like walking the runways of Paris. And the reality was I still hated myself. And I picked up disordered eating patterns. Actually, 1 in 3 people who go on a diet go on to disordered eating patterns or an eating disorder. So why risk going on a diet where 95% of the time it's going to fail and there's a 1 in 3 chance that you're going to pick up disordered eating patterns?
Mm-hmm. Can I ask real quick, what's your your background, your education background?
So my background is nothing to do with this. So I have a degree in illustration. Okay. And then my at UBC, as an adjunct professor, I teach within the business school.
Okay, because I was just going to ask you, what's the difference between an eating disorder and a disordered eating habit? And if you knew that, and if you're qualified to answer that.
It would be groups of behaviors that are then diagnosed.
Okay.
So if you have an eating disorder, then it would be like a full-blown thing. Right. Versus disordered eating patterns could be just that you're constantly monitoring calories in something. And that would be a disordered eating habit. Okay. But it wouldn't be a full-blown disordered eating disorder.
Right. So any kind of neuroses perhaps around your relationship with food, whether, you binge and go and pound that bag of chips, which I did on the weekend, and then, feel maybe not so good about it afterwards, or like you said, calorie counting. So, so just neurotic eating pattern behaviors.
Yeah. And so it's so deeply ingrained. So many people do have disordered eating patterns, but it's so normalized, like you say, eating a bag of chips at the weekend. Whereas if you get to a place where you're neutral with food, you maybe won't have that need to eat a big bag of chips because you can have chips as whenever you want, and that's kind of like diety behavior because your body's saying, oh my God, chips, we love them, and we're not really allowed to have them. But if you had chips every day for a month, by the end of the month, you'd be like, fuck these chips. Yeah, right. I don't want them, right? And so that's the answer to it, is just allowing yourself the food and seeing what happens.
Right. So there's a lot of forces at play that influence how we think about our bodies and how society views our bodies. And there's also so many biological factors as well that influence why we even gain weight. Our bodies are meant to put on weight to be able to survive famine and periods of little food, right? But what are some of the things that people can do then if they are emotionally eating or they don't know why they're eating so much? What are some of the things that would actually work? What would you recommend to somebody?
So if someone is struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating patterns, then I would look into, there's a model called Health at Every Size, and it's about accepting yourself the way that you are and pursuing health without weight loss. Because weight loss doesn't necessarily mean being healthier. So I would go to a therapist or a coach that specializes in a health at every size approach, and then try and neutralize feelings around food, which is easier said than done.
I imagine. Yeah. That's some probably deep personal work that it becomes.
Yes, because some people take drugs, some people drink, and the more socially acceptable thing to do is to eat. Not saying everyone who's fat has been overeating or whatnot, but it's
a food addiction.
So it could be that you would binge, and so that's one ways that someone can use to feel better and to cope with things. And when you're neutral around food, you lose that. The food doesn't have that effect anymore, and so you need support from a therapist or a counselor or whatever to be able to work with your emotions in a healthier way.
Now, how much is it, do you think, that it is like psychological? Or how much is it actually biological, where you're getting signals from your body, like, and you're getting food cravings for different things for whatever reason? Like, or is it a combination of the two?
Our bodies are super smart, and so it's a mix, right? So sometimes how you're like, I just really crave a salad or some avocado or a carrot, and if you listen to your body, you'll be able to like, oh yeah. Because your body is saying, I need what's in an avocado or a carrot or a salad. Or it could be that you need some salty food or some sweet food or whatever. But then the specific foods that you may crave if you're feeling quote unquote bad or bingy or something, that might be more of the stuff that you've been denying yourself. And so that's more the psychological level.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I could see how they would affect each other too.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're having if you're really stressed out, you could trigger binge session, or if you're really depleted in something, that could trigger that as well.
Exactly.
Right. So it's more complex than just that.
Yeah, and if you're denying yourself, say no matter what it is, say if you're like, I mustn't eat chocolate. Like chocolate is my thing that I always go to. The more that you avoid chocolate, your brain's going to be like chocolate, 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 and then the moment you see chocolate, it tastes better, it smells better, the look of it is like glistening, and when you put it in your mouth, it's the most delicious thing you've ever tasted. And so, you just have to let yourself have the chocolate or whatever it is.
Yeah. I want to go back to, you kind of spoke about this like personal, I don't know, releasing or like realization of when like I'm still a good person and like it doesn't matter. Like, can you kind of talk about that a little bit more depth? Like, what was that like for you? And like, was there something specifically you were doing? Was there a moment? Was it like a process over time? Was it something you had to kind of keep reminding yourself or chipping away? Like, can you kind of elude on that or evolve on that a little bit more?
So I had just won this prize. I used to work in corporate recruitment for being the best recruiter in the country. So I was great at my job, and it was like, this is the pinnacle, but I still feel like a bag of shit. And I was just like, I I just don't know. And so on social media, I came across a blog called Dances with Fats, and written by Reagan Chastain, and she is hilarious and awesome. And she just had this concept of, what if it's okay to be fat? And I was like, bitch, no, it's not okay to be fat. Like, what are you talking about? And I was reading her blog posts, and the more that she showed the science behind health at every size, and even if even if being fat automatically means that you're wickedly unhealthy, is that okay? Like, is it okay to be, are you worthy if you're unhealthy? Are you still a worthy human being? And the answer is yes, even if you are unhealthy. You are still a worthy human being. And all this stuff blew my mind. And so it wasn't an overnight thing where I was like, oh my God, I'm a queen. It took time, because we all have fat phobia biases. And so it may be a little thing, or it may be a massive fat phobic bias. So I was massively fat phobic. I would look at fat people and be like, oh, look at them. They're probably at home, guzzling like pounds of Cheetos and, all sorts of stuff, and they probably never exercise, and it made me feel so good to judge.
So all these judgments of other people.
And that too fell onto me of, what are people thinking about me? And they must think that I'm doing this and that. And so still, even though I've been working on this for years, there still can be times where something pops into my brain and I'm like, Victoria, what are you doing? Why are you thinking like that about that person? And so it's something that I've had to work on for a long time, and it's probably something that I'll work on for the rest of my life. And yeah, so that was the process.
Okay. Right, and it's ongoing.
Ongoing, yeah.
So just to play devil's advocate, just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
We know that there are a lot of health-related diseases, right, to being overweight. So how do we manage that balance between, making sure someone lives optimally and trying to optimize their health, but also not causing them psychological stress where they feel shitty about themselves?
Mm-hmm.
How do we find that balance?
Yeah, so I'm going to challenge the statement that you made about being overweight. There's health-related diseases, and so weight and health are not necessarily correlated. And I know a lot of people will be like, that's wrong. We all know that. We all know that being fat is unhealthy. But I challenge people to look at that thought and think, have you known any fat people to be healthy? Have you known any thin people to be unhealthy? Like, yes, like that's life, right? And so you can live this health at every size model where you're healthy and you live a healthful life. And so say, you eat well, you exercise, you are spiritual, you're happy, all that sort of stuff, and you're still fat. That doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to get any types of diseases or you're going to die earlier. Stats show actually being a little bit heavier than average leads to a longer life, which is counterintuitive because we've been told by our media that thin is the best. And
yeah, we've been told by a lot of people, just other than media, like our doctors and education system, and a lot of people have told us that over the years. That's why it's like that mode of thinking is so ingrained in us. So it's like I imagine getting over that hurdle is tricky for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's so there.
Yeah.
Well, that I think it gets distorted with like that message by doctors, but then also just with the images we see. When you see someone that's like in a magazine who's just shredded or ripped and super cut. Well, I mean, to get to that state where they actually take that picture and they're all tanned up and glistening, is like that person is on like they're not actually feeling good at all.
No,
like, it takes so much out of you to get that chisel. So you have this like image of like
and
that.
they're dehydrated too.
Totally.
And they
No
who
sugars,
knows what sort of
nothing.
amphetamines they're on in
Right.
order to cut that much
Or
down.
like-
and like it's not a natural state for human
Right.
beings.
So we get this like, oh my God, look at how they're able to look, and then the same message from the doctor, but they're not. It's just so easy to get that message jumbled up in our minds.
So you're saying that overweight does not necessarily equal unhealthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's something that, is so controversial and seems like a wild thing to even consider. But if you can just suspend your belief and think, a fat person, maybe they're healthy or maybe they're not. And anyway, does that mean that they're less worthy a human being if they're not healthy and they're fat?
Right. So the bigger issue that you're trying to tackle really is sort of the judgments or the bias against people who are overweight.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the bigger thing. It's like, okay, so they are, but they shouldn't be treated differently because they are.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And it's fat phobia is a very large prevalent bias in our culture, whereas other biases, your friends will probably call you out if you were like, oh, hey, look at that, person over there, and you picked on something about them. Most likely your friends would be like, hey, that's not cool. But if you're like, oh, look at this fat person over there, they should go to the gym, your friends, might be like, stop being a dick, but they might be thinking, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Where it's not sort of, it's more acceptable.
Yeah,
right?
It's more acceptable. And I would like it if we could just look at everyone, no matter what they are, fat, thin, tall, short, whatever, and just be like, oh, there's a person.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I think about too when it comes to any of that sort of stuff is that, it's really easy to judge people for their state of being, but we know nothing about their life and we know nothing about why they are that way, no matter what it happens to be. You know what I mean? Whatever thing we're saying about that other person. Everyone has been on their life path for the duration of their entire life, obviously. And it's like certain things have happened to them along the way, which definitely contribute to the way they're turning out. So it's like, okay, so that person has a bit of a weight problem. Well, we have no idea what underlying issues there might be for that person. So it's just like to sit around and judging other people is just like, we don't know. You have no idea what caused that person to be that way. Maybe they were severely abused as a child and they have an emotional eating problem because of that, right? It's like, is that their fault? Can they take responsibility for that? Possibly. But it's like, wow, it's like you wouldn't say that about, someone with some sort of disability or someone with a severe addiction. So, why so harsh with other people?
And it could be that there's no underlying issues, that someone is just a bigger person.
Right.
Because we all come in different shapes and sizes, and you see like one family, everyone will be fat, or one family, everyone will be short. Well, because we're all different types of people, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as well, maybe fat people could do something about it, but then remember the statistic where 95% of diets fail.
Right.
And so we're kind of, society is lulled into the idea that we can just, if we work hard enough or if we're dedicated enough, we can change our body. But that's why the diet industry is so massive, because we can't necessarily change our body that dramatically.
Right.
And it seems to be like, coming back to most things in life, it's not black and white, or black or white. It's always these shades of gray, and they're very complicated. They're very intertwined. But then often, too, the solutions to these things can be relatively simple for each individual. Whenever that kind of light bulb clicks in and like, I don't know, it's like a internal acceptance or surrendering to something, or who knows what that process is that you can kind of,
is like people do all sorts of things that are bad for their health all the time, like smoking, like drinking, like drugs, like excessive anything, right? So it's like you kind of pick your poison, and it's like, do you have a quality of life? What's your quality of life like? So, if you're happy and enjoying your life and successful and contributing to the world in a positive manner, and you happen to be a little bit overweight, well, who cares, right? Are you happy living that life? Like, what's the quality of life like, right?
Yeah.
And even if there were adverse health effects to it, it's like, well, we make our choices too. You know what I mean? And it's okay. Like, are we happy with that? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that idea?
Yeah. So absolutely. No matter what you look like, if you're happy, then like, why then change something when there's not going to be any real benefit?
Right.
So yeah. And I don't know what you were saying, but it was making me think about the other side of things. So women might get the, oh, she's too fat. Oh, it's because I'm dating at the moment and being on Tinder or whatever. And I see so many people saying, oh, we want men to be 5'7", or like, I'm 5'7". If you're under 5'7", don't talk to me. And the women get the, if you're too fat, don't talk to me.
Right.
And I see it for the guys who are under 5'7". I'm like, damn, man, there's amazing guys out there who are not getting a look in because they're 5'7" or under.
And by the way, there's nothing they can do about that.
Right. And it's, and so it goes every different way that you don't fit into what society tells you should be, it's damaging. Right. And all of these women are missing out on potentially incredible men who happen to be 5'6", you know?
Yeah. Okay, so we know that all these biases, conscious or unconscious, exist. We know that those are there. Mm-hmm. So what is your message to people to try to shift away from that? Like, you know, where does somebody start if they are making all these judgments about other people, and that could be pretty universal, whatever judgments you're making about people. Let's talk about maybe why that's not serving them, and then how could they shift out of that if they wanted to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I heard Zamina mention this about just recognizing when you have a bias. That's incredible, because a lot of the times we don't even realize that we have a bias. And so as soon as you realize it and you're like, damn, I want to change, I don't want to be a bad person, then you can start challenging those beliefs when you have a thought and it pops in your head like, oh, there's a fat person, they must be guzzling donuts. And then you can be like, is that based in truth, or did I, is that a snap judgment, or whatever it is? Oh, look, there's a short person. Oh, whatever you're thinking about them. In regards to changing your own beliefs about yourself, so if you're struggling with something, some body image issue, then you need to change your neural pathways. And so because these thoughts are so deeply ingrained from the moment we have an idea about who we are as a person, we know why we're good and why we're bad, and how our image is good or bad. So what I say to people is you need to surround yourself with people and media that shows you your body. And so for fat people, follow plus size models on Instagram, or don't watch Real Housewives of Vancouver or something, So make sure that you're watching and consuming things that shows you diverse body types. And then before you know it, you'll be like, oh, actually that plump woman isn't so disgusting. Or actually, that 5'2" guy is really handsome, or whatever it is. And so you really have to be careful with what you consume, because it's affecting your brain.
Right. So, the inputs that we're consuming are shaping the way we view the world. Potentially.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, you're trying to create this new positive mentality for yourself, regardless of whatever your size or anything like that. And there are people in your lives that are criticizing you, and like maybe they're family members or friends, and maybe they're people that you do want to have in your life. How do you think somebody could approach them and let them know that what they're doing is hurting them or counterproductive? This
is one of the toughest things that I see my clients deal with, because it's kind of hard to say, Mum, you're out of my life, get out of here. And so if you can, say if you have friends and you realize that one friend, she just makes me feel like awful. See if you can get out of your life. If you can't, then just explain to them what you're doing. Hey, I'm really trying to work on my body image. And when you say this, it kind of makes me feel a little bit, bad or shit or whatever. Do you think that you could avoid saying that? And if they're a good person, they'll probably say, yeah, I'll try. And they'll probably slip up, and then you'll say, hey, you remember that I'm trying to do that thing? And they're like, oh yeah, sorry. And so it'll be a learning process for them. For example, my mum, she's the sweetest person ever, but she's and she's tiny. She's this tiny little Irish lady, and she thinks that she's fat. And so she talks about herself in negative ways, and she might be like, oh, maybe you should wear something that hides your bum, or maybe you should. And so I have to correct her and say, hey, can you maybe not say that about my bum, or whatever it is? And she'll be like, oh, yeah. And then she might slip up again. And so I will...
So being patient with the people as well.
Yeah, because they are, we all are living in this society that tells us we have to look a certain way, and they're trying their best. And I love my mum. I think she's amazing, and I want her in my life. But the other side of it is okay to cut family members out of your life. You don't have to. If someone's super abusive and they're just like, no, you're stupid and you're a loser, you can be like, eventually when you have enough courage, you can get rid of them. So
right. Okay. Well, so if you were to, design your perfect sort of scenario in terms of how people treat each other and are acting and reacting to each other, what does that look like? Because it seems like there's an infinite array of judgments and biases, and how can people, live in a world like that, or improve a world like that is a better way of saying it.
So what is my ideal is for everyone to see the beauty in every way of being as a human. And there's so many, and that's a surface level, but also understand that what someone can give as a human is not their appearance, it's what's inside their heart and their brain. So that's my ideal, where everyone can be like, oh, there's a person, they look different, that's kind of interesting, that's neat, I like that. And I wonder what they're like as a person. So that's the dream. Yeah,
create that sort of openness to, like, instead of closing off what you assume because of how your initial judgment is, like, and that's the thing, like, I think these judgments are super hard to tame, right? But at least, okay, can you just see that you're judging, first of all, and then after the judgment, you'd be like, okay, well, hold on, maybe can you inject a little bit of consciousness and just be like, maybe what can I be open to about this person?
Yeah,
I wonder what they know, I wonder what they care about, I wonder whatever, like, because, like, these judgments are going to happen, like, whatever the judgment is, like, we judge, and I think there's probably, like, a biological reason for that.
There is. It helps us categorize people to know if they're safe or dangerous. Yeah.
Right. Am I like them? Do I look like them? Can I trust them?
This is a great rule in Jordan Peterson's new book. It's how does it go? It is.
What's it about?
It's about. Assume the person you're talking to knows something that you don't. That's a really good one that I've been working with. Because it's like, let's say I'm talking to somebody and I don't want to talk to them for whatever reason. But just assume that by talking to that person that they know something that you don't, and you can possibly learn something and improve the quality of your life just by talking to them.
Yeah.
And that's a great little rule I've been kicking around in my head lately, and trying to implement as frequently as I can.
And even if they don't, you're practicing that loving kindness part of your personality.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we live in this giant global community now, so we have, like, these online interactions and visuals, and then the in-person ones as well, and it's like, it's part of this growth that we have to go through as a species. Like, we have to move past the tribalism ways if we can, and even if they're ingrained in our biology for some reason, like, okay, but can we acknowledge that? Can we recognize that and move beyond it? And, like, just this.
And recognize that everybody has value.
That's right.
Everybody has value. There's something that they bring to the table that can make things a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a huge practice. Very cool. So how are you feeling overall about the talk you're going into?
I am super excited, and I have a little surprise at the end of the talk. I won't say what it is, but it's kind of interesting. So
cool.
I'm really excited about it.
All right, and you're wrapping up the whole show too. So you're closing the show.
I'm going to be ending with a bang. So
awesome.
I'm really excited about that.
Very exciting.
Yeah, and before we went on, you were telling us about a technique that you're using to try to calm the nerves the day up. Do you want to share what you're doing?
So a lot of people say to me, Victoria, are you nervous? Are you nervous? And I'm like, no, I feel okay, actually. Because I keep visualizing the stage, and the Queen Elizabeth Theatre stage is actually the largest stage in North America. And visualizing this expansive stage and just feeling calm and not saying anything, the audience being there in front of me and me not knowing a single word, and just feeling calm and breathing into it. And so I feel good.
Nice. So when you do that exercise, because I love these sorts of exercises, do you make sure that you bring yourself viscerally in your body to that state of being, right?
Exactly.
It's like I got to feel it and like really immerse it in it.
Yeah, feel the carpet beneath my feet, the lights on my face,
the warmth,
and
all the faces that you probably can't see because of the lights.
Yeah, no, you can't see. Yeah. So, and as well, I've noticed that if I do get nervous when I'm talking, I just need to take one breath. And it just slows everything down, and I can feel relaxed. So I know that if I do freak out or anything, then I'll take a breath. And anyway, even if it goes terribly, it's still an experience. So
that's it.
What else can you share about the TEDx Stanley Park process?
Well, I was saying before we went live is that it is incredible. The amount of training that the speakers get is unlike any other TEDx that I know of. Most TEDx's, they're fantastic, but the amount that the speakers get beforehand is maybe not as expansive. And so we've had hundreds of hours of training. We've had training we have an image coach. We have a comedian that helps us with our scripts. We have all sorts of people that help us make this the talk of our lives.
It's quite the production.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. And so this has been something that I personally have been working on for 14 months now, this one talk. So I hope it's going to be good.
Oh, yeah. How can it not
And
be?
14
Pressure.
months, and how many times have you rehearsed?
I've hundreds of times, and rehearsed in so many different ways, and rehearsed using like imagery, using hearing my voice being spoken back to me in front of audiences on my own, like thousands.
Yeah. Well, no wonder, Roger's gold standard for his TEDx's is he wants to get 100% standing ovations for every single speaker. So that's what he shoots for every year. So if every speaker gets a standing ovation, Roger says that he had a good day.
Yes.
So it's pretty high standards. Standing O's, they don't come easy. And
right.
nor should they. I mean, that's like a pretty good one. If you have a standing ovation during a talk, you're like, that you hit a chord with people.
Yes,
you know?
yes. And my goal is to have 2 standing ovations, one before I even open my mouth. Just by being on stage, people are going to go wild. It's Victoria. And then one after.
Beautiful.
And that's actually the mark of an amazing speaker, when they're getting standing O's before they even open their mouth.
Can you imagine?
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah, it's crazy. But
It
it's
happened
just like-
once last year,
Yeah.
because the person who got the 2 standing ovations had a massive crowd with him.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And I'll be there, and that's on March 3rd.
Yes.
Right? It's the entire day, and I'll be there watching all the speakers. So I'm really excited
Amazing.
about it. And is there anything else you'd like to throw out there today?
Just thank you so much for having me. And if you want to hear more about being a rad, fierce fatty, then follow me on Instagram at BamPowLife.
Bam Pow Life.
Pal
Yes.
Life.
I like that.
Me
Punchy.
too.
Thank
That's
you.
very easy to remember and fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you like what you heard today, if you could leave us a rating on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, like, share, comment, engage. Engagement these days is like the new currency on social media. So if you could help us out that way, that would be great. Of course, if you'd like to meet up with us in person, go to Vancouver Meditation Flash Mob on Facebook.
I feel like you change the name every time.
I do.
Okay.
But if you put in Vancouver Meditation Mob, you're going to find it.
Yeah,
Guaranteed.
exactly.
And Vancouver Real Community as well. These are our little communities that we run outside of here. And, of course, go for a float. Go visit floathouse.ca. Use the promo code Vancouver Real. Get a 20% discount.
Awesome. That's it. So, and go to TEDxStinleyPark.com and get your tickets or whatever it is. Just Google. Google is your friend for now.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. All right. Until next time.
To whatever is.
To whatever is.